So we are with Andy Tran, and Andy has, I think, you know what, I'll never forget the impact that you had on me. We were doing an event, Andy, and you don't know this. And I remember I had read some of your stuff that you had on the internet, or that sounds so crazy. Some stuff that you had on the internet, good stuff about real estate. Like it was about, what's this thing called the internet? And, you know, you're very capable and very articulate in the way you communicate some of your thoughts on real estate. And I remember, I think you were at one of our earlier Your Life, Your Terms events. And I remember thinking, wow, like we better put on a freaking good thing here today because this guy, Andy's here and I know he knows what he's talking about. And I thought, why the hell is he here? I don't know what we can teach this guy. So it was almost like a compliment that you would take the time on a Saturday to come to our event. So thank you for supporting us for so long, man. Like it has been a long time you've supported us, and it just really means a lot. Without sometimes when you start a business, you doubt yourself. And then when you see good people around, it kind of gives you a little bit of motivation or a little bit of, I don't know, pat on the back or a little bit of weird approval that you need to keep going. And you had that impact on me. So thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. But were you guys talking about second suites or something like that? And
no.
And I was sitting in the front row and you're like staring at me. And
no. The second suites wasn't even thinking. Bring the mic here. Hold on. I'm going to put this here because I want you this way. Yeah. No, second suites back then wasn't even a thing. Like people weren't even talking about second suites.
Wow, was this like 2009? Was it like 2009?
No, I think it was still the rent-to-own era, but it wasn't. It wasn't second suites. There's different eras in real estate investing.
It was like 2011 or something. Yeah,
maybe something like that. But I remember rent-to-own was like that's all we talked about for a few years, and then after that, I guess it went kind of to straight rentals for a little while because interest rates came down, and then it went to like it wasn't even second suites. I don't know if it was that the entrance of Burr into the market? I forget. And then second suites. And now the last couple of years, it's been a lot of student rentals just because the amount of rent that you can generate on a student rental property. Yeah. So it's like every 2 years, there's like a new theme in real estate and someone thinks they've rediscovered like something that we've been doing, not us, but that has been done in real estate investing for a million years already, right? Yeah. It's just if you're new, if you're like 25 and the student rental era hasn't been discussed or wasn't popular for the last 10 years, then you think you just discovered student rentals, Yeah.
So it's crazy how like it just kind of evolved. When you say rent to own, I'm just thinking, the first.
How much fun have we got made up for rent to own?
Hey, it was good. So 2010 was when I bought my first single family property. You guys talked a lot about getting that nice house and, single family home in a nice neighborhood. So 2010, I bought that house. I did the rent to own strategy. I went to the seminar with Mike DeZormo. And dude, it was.
Am I too loud in your ear, by the way?
No, it's good.
Ask you.
It's good.
Okay.
Looking at the numbers, it was just ridiculous when you compare it to the numbers now, but it's just kind of like slowly evolves and you don't even notice it. It's like a boiling frog, right? It was $1,500 for rent for the entire house, so no basement suite.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was able to give them $200 a month towards their down payment if they buy the house 2 or 3 years down the road, and I was cash flowing like $250.
I know.
Like those numbers are, it's like, when you're a kid and they tell you like, back in the day, people buy a Coke for 10 cents. Like that's how I feel like when we're talking about that right now.
When I remember on one of the first rent to owns we did, it was right around the time where he's since passed away, but late Finance Minister of Canada, Jim Flaherty, temporarily approved in the country 0% down and 5% down mortgages for investors through CMHC.
I remember that.
So we could buy in Hamilton for $210,000 a fully detached home. We could put down 5%. So it was like, $10,500, $11,000 or whatever it was. We were asking for the seller on paper to pay for our closing costs. So we were asking on the Schedule A, like all written open for everybody to see, for the banks to see, for everyone to see. We were asking the seller, can you pay for our legal fees at closing and our closing costs? And we would get them to agree to that. Then we would do a rent to own on the property after putting down $11,000 or $12,000 total out of pocket. And we would get like $15,000 as the upfront option fee and first and last month's rent. And Nick and I couldn't understand what was happening. We're like, wait a second, what is happening here? Like, we're getting more back within 60 days of closing on this property than we used to actually purchase the property. And instead of like going and trying to do 100 of them, I think it paused us a little bit. We're like, are we doing is there something wrong? Like, what's happening? Why isn't everybody doing this? I don't understand. And you were helping these amazing families who had good income, but for whatever reason had bad credit. And they're like, listen, I can afford to buy this house at the end of this rent to own period. I just don't have the credit for the banks to get me the mortgage.
Yeah.
So you're actually helping me out because I want my kids to be in this area. So it was like this weird brief moment where it was win-win-win on all sides. And I remember when we sold some of those properties, like for 200 and I think we sold some at like 260,000 or something.
Yeah.
And the profit for us in the end, we thought where it was like a jackpot, like we had hit the home run. Now looking,
15K or something.
yeah, like like if it was 21K, it was like huge. You know, we're like, oh my gosh, we are the smartest. We are the smartest real estate investors in all of Canada. Meanwhile, if all we did was keep those properties now are all like 850, 950, right?
Yeah.
So looking back, it's kind of laughable, but it's weird how real estate investing works. And it's weird to also hear people call the death of real estate because every generation has that moment where they're like, oh, real estate investing's over. You know, interest rates and prices doesn't work anymore. On our team, it was 234,000. I'll never forget. JP on our team walked in one day and he said, Tom, well, it's been a good run, but I guess now, you know, we're going to have to go from 234,000 to 239,000 for these single family homes. It's just not going to work anymore. The numbers just aren't there.
You know Garth Turner?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I forgot.
So I read his book in like...
I read his books too.
I read his book in like 2007. And I said, oh man, this market's...
It's going to crash.
Like, it's going to crash. So I bought a pre-construction condo in 2006. That was my first investment. 2006, I read Garth Turner's book in 2007. And I said, oh shit. I was like, I got to go into index funds or whatever.
Immediately, yeah.
And then I got screwed. 2008,
great financial crisis. Yeah.
And then that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I need to get educated. I need to figure out what's going on. And then obviously it made sense, right? Going back into hard assets and knowing what's coming with all the money printing and all that.
Yeah. I remember reading his stuff. I think he was calling for the death of the real estate market in the early 2000s. I feel like I was reading his stuff like for years.
Yeah.
And I had the same moment where you realize, oh my gosh, I actually have to figure this out on my own. I can't listen to people who are telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So for you, it was a great financial crisis.
That was the pain moment for me to really...
Because you were invested in U.S. stocks?
No, it was this thing called... Okay, I subscribed to this thing called, I think it's still around, Money Sense magazine.
Oh, yeah.
So I read it like religiously from like 2004 to like 2008, right? I was like, this is the magazine. This is like, I'm ahead of everyone because no one's understanding the financial system better than me, right? Because I'm reading this Money Sense magazine and they kept talking about this couch potato strategy, which is you invest in index funds, you invest in the broader stock market, and over time you're gonna do well, right? But they don't talk about the actual long-term debt cycle. They talk about kind of business cycles every 4 years, 5 years. And it's true. Like if you actually just invested in the stock market for this number of years, you're gonna do well. But you're really just kind of barely going above inflation, the kind of stuff that you guys talk about with M2 money supply. Yeah. So when it all came crashing down in 2008, I'm like, okay, this is not supposed to happen. Like, even though it kind of bounced back, I started digging in. I'm looking at the reason why it bounced back. And you kind of get deeper into, okay, what is this thing called the central bank and how does it work? Oh, they buy bonds from the government. So the government doesn't print the money.
There's so many of us that went down that path together.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned before we started recording Mike Maloney's videos, that had a big impact on me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what is this gold thing? How does this work? And like, oh my gosh, this is like, how does Lynn Alden refer to gold? This is nature's ledger.
Yeah.
It's not like a credit-based kind of man-made ledger. This is nature's ledger. And that's when I went down into the gold world. So did you become a gold bug in that era as well?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
So I went to I went to the Rockstar event in like 2010 when you guys had it. Where did you guys have it? So anyways, you were on stage talking and you're like, I don't really want to talk about gold because if I talk about gold, people are going to just like, there's going to be all these weird conversations. I was like, I got to talk to this guy. It was like my second Rockstar event. And I'm like, but I was kind of nervous. So I was like, oh, I want to talk to him, but I'm kind of nervous. Like,
oh shit. Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about.
Had a good run till like 2012. Then it kind of stopped.
Oh yeah. It reached all-time highs.
I think around there and then it just didn't do anything. I think now it's about to crash through that again. We're right back to where that was.
Yeah. That was a lesson.
Mm-hmm. And is that what drove you then into real? Like, what was the Because then now, obviously, looking at you now with everything you've done in real estate, I want to talk to you about garage conversions in a second, but with legal second suites and just your knowledge of real estate, how did that come to be? Can you remind me? It was at that era that you just started picking up books and trying to figure out how real estate could help you?
Yeah. It a whole bunch of things came together where I said, this is kind of the right path for me, right? Like I was, learning about, the whole macro thing, kind of what we just discussed. And I was looking at, okay, what can I do that's in line with this, that matches up with my skill set? So at the time I was actually a home inspector. And funny thing is I went to school for architecture. I didn't really learn anything. Even though I went to architecture school, I didn't really learn anything about houses. It wasn't until I was an inspector and I'm going to houses, I'm looking at furnaces, I'm looking at, going to the attics, looking at insulation. I'm like, okay, this is how it actually works. This is how a house actually works. And so when I was doing inspections, I was doing energy audits and all that. And then having gone through that whole great financial crisis and then digging in, I said, okay, well, it seems like hard assets like houses make sense. And because now I have this understanding of how houses work, how can I combine it? How can I use my skill sets to benefit myself from an investment standpoint? And then figuring out ways, how can I incorporate this into, my, into a business, into a way to make a living. And so it took several years. I was still working. I was working in the education department of Carson Dunlop, the home inspection company. I was teaching home inspectors. I was, putting together educational material. And it wasn't until 2015 that I kind of okay, let me just start this business and be a consultant and figure it out. Because people are asking me all the time, is this basement legal? Can I rent it out? And I would always just say, ask your lawyer, ask your realtor. They were never able to get the answers. Call the city. And so, because I went through it, on my own in 2010, 2011 on my own house, I kind of knew the process. And I said, okay, if I'm scratching my own itch and I'm making it work for myself, there's got to be other people that also need it. And so it kind of worked out, right? So mid 20 teens, that's when I started the business, 2015.
Got it.
And it's been pretty much in line with the whole, what we talk about with hard assets, but also at the same time, forcing appreciation, forcing value increases onto a property as well.
Yeah, you took the ball and you kind of ran with it, because I think I remember at one of the last events, I just remember seeing you at the table there outside and people were just swarming you. I wonder, just going forward, it's just going to be, I feel like the opportunity going forward is really just maximizing the land that you have. Whereas before it was just you got a home, let's rent it out and see what we can do. But then there's been this movement to legalizing second suites. Yep. And now you're just telling me that the second suite isn't what I used to just expect, which was a basement, that people are doing. Can I use the language second suite as a garage conversion? Is that considered a second suite when you're converting a garage into, how's this municipality, or is it different by municipality? Because that's what you're doing now, right? You're working with people converting some garages into 2-bedroom units.
Yes. So the way these things are defined is sort of like the bane of my existence right now. There's a million different names for them. There's actually, technically, I think there's 75 different names for these things. And they all kind of get used interchangeably. And so the kind of official term, the term that they use in U.S. urban planning is ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And they could be in the basement. They could be on, attached to the house. They could be detached. Here in Canada, we really just kind of refer to them as secondary suites or second suites. And most of them were basements, right? But now there's all these changes happening, at the provincial level, at the municipal level, to create even more density, right? To add these garden suites in the people's backyards, to turn single family homes into multiplexes. Mm-hmm. And so, that was kind of the natural progression of second suites. Is at first, we're able to get single family homes to work in 2010, and then slowly it didn't work anymore. And it was, since 2015, it's always been it's almost been mandatory that you had to put in the second unit. And then at the last couple of years, it's been, even that is getting tight, the cash flow. So it's okay, you got to get more creative, 3 units, 4 units. And then at the same time, I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of went into this rabbit hole of urban planning and understanding how that works, and understanding that the issues we have here in GTA and really North American cities is this suburban sprawl that is actually financially non-sustainable. And so intensification is really not just about, you hear a lot on the news about, environmental issues and a lot of things, but densification is actually a requirement for financial feasibility within the city's balance sheets. So I kind of went into that rabbit hole, and then again, everything kind of lined up and it made sense from a policy perspective, and also financially it made sense for homeowners, investors to be able to do these.
It's funny because nobody really wants to densify in North America, almost in any city. But then when you travel to Europe and you go to some of my favorite cities, they're awesome because there's like a bar on every corner, a cafe on every corner, a bakery on every corner. And that actually only works because of the density in those areas. So like I love going to those cities so much, but I guess recently in Barcelona, and I mean, you're walking through these areas and it's amazing. And we can't get that because of the urban sprawl here. It just doesn't make sense. With a suburbia, you're not going to put a bakery on every corner because there's not enough customers. So part of the way of life that I particularly enjoy is solved with densification. But if you ask people to densify an area, they're just going to fight tooth and nail. Nobody wants the sixplex next to them, the triplex next to them. So we're in this weird state here in North America where it's like, I don't know how we're going to transition from this urban sprawl to more density unless it's just rammed through. Isn't Toronto doing as of right sixplexes? Is that approved now this year?
It depends on the area. So if you're pretty much any single family area, like they call them neighborhoods or loosely the yellow belt in Toronto, the as of right policy is that you can convert your single family to 4 units plus do a garden suite or a laneway suite on any single family lot, right? If you're in sort of the corridors, like the higher density close to transit, I believe it's higher, much higher. That's part of the...
So maybe this comes into Toronto over the next few years. What are you seeing with investors? Are they approached to do some of these garage conversions that you're doing? That's rather interesting to me because the structure is already there. So is the investor then, this just seems like a jackpot for an investor. So can you describe some of the projects that you're currently on? Like what's the kind of lot? What are you doing with these garage conversions?
Yeah, so if there's an existing...
I'm going to push the mic to you more. Yeah. There you go, there.
So if there's an existing detached structure, most of the time it's a garage, but it could be, like a big workshop or a big shed or something like that. When they were built, they did not comply with the same...
I'm going to change you one more time. Come this way because the camera's over here. There we go. There we go.
All right,
there we go. Now we got Andy. Okay. Go ahead. So yeah, a garage conversion looks like what?
So it's an existing structure. So when these were built as garages, they weren't subject to the same building code requirements as if you were build a small house. And so what that means is usually the foundation, it may not be as the integrity of it may not be as robust as, say, for a home. So in these situations, we would need to get an engineer to ensure that the slab is in good condition, there's good frost protection, the structure is in good condition. So if the engineer signs off on it and provides, some sort of a prescription for what needs to be done to bring it up to a certain standard, we can then do the conversion. And that's what the cities will accept. So, to date, we've done over a dozen garage conversions. Anything from studio apartments on a single car garage to, 2 bedrooms from a 2-car garage. And, these things will rent anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500 a month. And they're nice because you have that separation from the main house.
Yeah,
right?
It's more private.
It's private. And the great thing about them is that you're now saving on the foundation, you're saving on the structure, which, these days could be $100,000.
Is the foundation generally okay, or does that require some work? Because you're just talking about a slab.
Yeah. So there's
in Canada, that's okay. It's deep enough to withstand any changes or any frost. I don't know. Is there like a frost line? Is there a depth?
Yes.
That we need to. So how's that handled?
Usually the way that's handled is now if that structure has been there for a number of years, that's an indication as to how well it's holding up, right? So a lot of times the engineer will say, okay, well, we need to dig down, we need to add some underpinning, or we need to ensure that there's going to be some reinforcement. Sometimes portions of it have to be repaired, and sometimes we just have to kind of do it new, or a big portion of it or all of it, right?
Okay.
But if there's an indication that it's been there for, let's say, 10, 20, 30 years and it's still in good condition, for the engineer, they feel comfortable that, all you're doing right now is you're insulating it and it's not going to be a safety concern. That's really the number one concern, is it going to be a safety concern, right? So if you're putting in this additional unit, you're also heating the space. So it actually improves the condition of it.
I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you are also, you're required to do everything else, right? You're required to kind of get it insulated, make sure that the most important thing is making sure that the walls and the structure is also, level and plumb, so that there's not going to be any issues later on. Making sure there's no water that gets underneath the slab that can cause frost heaving. That's a big concern as well. So there's a number of things that, we have to prescribe, or the engineer has to prescribe for the city to be okay with that structure now being converted from something that stored vehicles to now something that's going to hold occupants.
Because now you're going to have to run gas lines, I guess, because you're dropping in a new furnace, I guess, here, because you're outside the main house.
Yeah, so we'll bring in utility services. For sure, you have to bring in electrical and plumbing and drains, right? Gas, in a lot of these conversions, these garage conversions, we're just using like heat pumps, so electricity. So if we're able to get 100 amp service from the main house to that garage, then we're usually able to get away with just putting a heat pump for the heating.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then maybe some electrical heat, like baseboards as a supplementary heating. So it doesn't take a lot. I mean, these things are going to be very well insulated, right?
So if someone's fortunate enough to have a property with a decent garage on it, they're saving a lot of cost already, because converting that existing garage to an actual legal ADU, garage conversion, whatever we're naming these things, it's much less than building the structure from scratch, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
And is that what you're finding?
Yeah. So it's like utilize what's there existing first before, considering doing new construction. New construction is very expensive.
And is there some parts of Toronto that are more inclined to do this than others? Are there some municipalities that are really pushing for this, or is it just new to everybody and it's possible everywhere?
It's pretty much possible. The province has mandated with Bill 23 that every property is required to allow a detached unit, right? So if it's an existing garage, oftentimes you get it grandfathered in with some of the bylaws, like the setbacks, the separations between the ADU and the house. Whereas if you're building new, you have to comply with everything, right? So from a homeowner investor standpoint, that's why it's also easier as well. And from the city standpoint, all cities, they want more housing, right? Like they, in general, from the high level housing and planning committee, they encourage these, they want these. But then obviously there's bottlenecks with, building departments and ensuring that you're complying with the code and all that sort of stuff, right? So typical with every municipality.
And who's your client right now? Is it an investor saying, hey, I see this opportunity on one of my properties? Or is it a homeowner who's like, holy shit, I have this garage and I want to convert it?
Both. For me personally, a lot are investors, just because that happens to be my network, with you guys and with other investors that I connect with. But both. Like I have people that say, hey, you know what? My mom's living in the main house right now. She's in her 70s. At some point, stairs are going to be an issue for her. And, she doesn't want to move out of the neighborhood. Let's convert this 2-car garage that we have that's being just stored with stuff that we're not using. Get rid of that. She can live there, and then she can rent out her main house or rent it out to her kids or whatever. So it works. It works for investors from a number standpoint to get the cash flow, and then also family dynamics. It works well.
And are there limitations? I've seen some 2-stories. I've seen some with basements. Can you make any of these ADUs? Is that jurisdiction or municipality dependent? Or how would you know if you can put a 2-story or a basement option on one of these things? Yeah,
usually with 2 stories, it's a municipal bylaw. So they'll have a height restriction. So they'll say something like, these ADUs have to be 3 meters or 6 meters. Then you'll kind of know if it's going to allow you to do 2 stories.
And basement?
Yeah, basements usually aren't a problem. Right?
Really?
Yeah. So we've had people put in basements. We've had people put in basements as a provision for potentially down the road that they'll even allow a second unit within the ADU.
Oh, shit.
That's interesting as well, right?
So one ADU is actually legally 2 ADUs.
Well, right now, not legally 2 ADUs.
But in the future, possibly.
Possibly, because they're doing that in Alberta. So they're allowing people to build laneway houses, and people are putting in second units within their laneway houses legally.
In anticipation that it's... No, they're doing it legally now.
They're doing it legally.
You're saying people are kind of setting themselves up here in case that's legalized.
I think that's the direction we're headed, because construction costs are very high. So the more units you can get into a project, the lower the cost is going to be on a per square foot basis, right? So if cities want to encourage and want more people to build these, the numbers have to make sense, whether it's a homeowner or whether it's an investor. By them allowing these new construction ADUs to have second units, it's going to make a lot more sense for people to build them because they were going to be able to finance them with additional rent.
And from what you've seen on contractors, are contractors just adapting to this new reality, just like another job for them, so it doesn't really matter? Like, are there any hiccups with contractors in this front, or no, it's really just the same construction?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit trickier because it's on a tighter site, right? So you have to get heavy equipment in there.
Got it.
You know, utility services, you have to connect everything to the main house. So it's, you know, it's not that straightforward. Like for a lot of builders, they're very much used to, you know, empty piece of land, you know, doing a road cut, connecting services directly to the city. Now you have to, you know, figure a way to navigate some of the existing services of the house, making sure the house itself, the original house itself, has adequate services. So it does become tricky, but I think in contractors and builders that, you know, specialize in this and are able to do these, I think the opportunities are huge.
And where are we with the modular stuff? Like, is it just going to come to a point where we can just drop these in rather quickly because it's all modular and, you know, it doesn't have to be built all the kind of old style, like the stick build?
Yeah, I would say we're still in the very early stages of that.
Why is that?
I think there's a few reasons. One is because, you know, it's great having a controlled environment like a factory where you can build them and basically just kind of come off the factory floor like a car. But unlike a car, you don't just, you know, a car, you just park it on the driveway. With a house, you can't just, you know, plop it into the ground as a lot of people envision it's going to be, right? You have to ensure that it connects, you know, you have a proper foundation, you have proper connection of services. You have to crane this thing in. You have to have local knowledge.
So it's still cheaper to build it from the ground up.
In many cases, when we're running the pro formas, it seems like it's still cheaper for on-site stick built, and there's more contractors, so there's more competition. Like right now, there's actually a lot of framers available.
Got it.
So there's still that, right? I feel like in time, in a couple years, possibly, you're going to get, because of the demand of these, there's going to be more facilities being built in different locations. So there's going to be lower transport costs because there's really only, you know, a handful of builders with very limited size facilities that have this. But I think you're going to start seeing investment in that. You're going to start seeing more.
I think so too. I can tell you tons of builders we know, some of them really high custom home builders, others, as well, are all pushing into this market.
Yeah.
Like many of them who have never entered this all see this as an opportunity in the Greater Toronto area that they want to dedicate the next decade of work to. So I feel like it's going to get super competitive, which is good because there's just more options and it should control some of the pricing that we see from contractors to build these things out. So I think it's a positive that we're going to see a rush of people into this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are really looking into the manufacturing space. If there's any builders out there listening or contractors out there listening, I think that a huge opportunity is if you could be that local person to build the foundations and be a specialist in the service connections, because there's a lot of juggling with various, utility. Like you have to, it's not like just the city. You have to deal with the city. You have to deal with the electrical company. You have to deal with Enbridge. You have to deal with the water department, engineering departments, right? So if there's something that you can specialize in and know that market, I think that's going to be huge. And then you partner with the actual manufacturers of the units at the factory, and then that's like 50% of it. I think that's huge. That's not something I'm going to get into, so I'm encouraging. Yeah,
I'm just wondering, Andy, why don't you go? But people right now are hiring you for the design component, right? Like to walk them through the permitting and design. Is that
correct?
Fair?
Yeah. So we're doing we're looking at the site, holistically and saying, what can you do with the existing house, and then building these garden suites, these garage conversions. We're helping them with the permits and kind of navigating that, getting them all ready, and then basically they work with the contractor, and we kind of coach them through the process.
Mm-hmm. And I guess some people. Just think if I already have the structure and I want to move it, have you craned any? No, but I guess you can't move it and get the grandfathered in on setbacks from the lots and stuff. I was just thinking if somebody has a beautiful garage, but they want to move it somewhere else on the lot, that's a nightmare. Because I was just thinking you could probably get a crane, lift it, add even a story to it if it's allowed. You can do a lot of wonderful things. But I guess to get grandfathering on setbacks of this thing, you kind of have to leave the garage where it is. Otherwise, it's considered a new build, so it doesn't really work.
Yeah, you can always get a minor variance and ask for special permission. Like if, let's say, you have a garage there that's in good shape, a nice concrete garage, and you want to add another story to it, even though that second story is not going to be grandfathered in, I think it's a very a good environment to go to the city and say, hey, I want to build an extra couple of bedrooms. And usually they'll allow it as long as you kind of make sure that, you're in line with the bylaws and in line with the official plan of the city.
Well, who's the easiest municipality to work with right now?
I would say that, in terms of progressiveness.
Yeah.
Like, Toronto, being a very high density city.
Oh, really? Okay.
Although, it's such a big city that, they're backlogged with so many different things, right? But, Hamilton, Kitchener, Guelph, Brantford. A lot of the cities that your clients work with, it's pretty good.
Okay. Any that are struggling that you want to name, or you'd rather not go on record and name any? You mentioned the good ones. You mentioned the good ones. Okay.
Yeah, let's stay positive.
Okay. And then what is, and then I guess, so if this is our future, I guess people are just going to be living in smaller space. Like, I mean, the idea of a family in Canada, I'm just trying to extrapolate where Canada's headed here. The idea of people finishing school, getting their own house on their own lots, kind of like going away. I just feel like that's gone. Like this whole idea of the Mississauga suburban house, or the Scarborough suburban house or the Markham suburban house. I guess like these communities still exist, but they're just going to morph over time. Like I feel like the community that my parents are in, I don't know, it's like 2,800 square foot house on a big lot, walkout basement. That era's kind of gone.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to compare it. I'm going to use the analogy of this thing here that you kind of like, this Bitcoin thing, right? Okay, so early on, maybe
I like that thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, okay. Do I talk about that sometimes?
Sometimes. Like some people were able to get one Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Even today, some people might be able to get one Bitcoin, but
it's probably
in the next 4 years, people probably won't be able to get one Bitcoin. So I think of it like compare it like a house, right?
I like where you're headed. I see it.
Right. So maybe in 4 years, maybe in 10 years, people will be okay with 0.1, 0.5 of a Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And I think with houses, it's really, people are adaptable. And, the thing that you see here in North America is, we grew up with this thing where it's like, we were told to get a good job, we're going to be able to afford a house. Mm-hmm. There's people in other parts of the world where, all they want is a roof over their head. And if that means a government subsidized condo with one bedroom, like in Hong Kong, they're happy with that because that will allow them to have a family. That will allow them to have, 2 kids, even though their kids are going to be sharing a bedroom or whatever, right? Or somebody's going to be sleeping in the living room. That's just the reality for a lot of people. And I think that in North America, we are accustomed to a lot of space. And we expect that everyone, some people are saying, I'm never going to have a family because I can't get a house. I think that,
it's going away.
People are going to be, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be able to live in a house, but I'll still have a family in a condo, or I'll have a family in one section of a house, right? And then you also have a lot of people that say, well, why do we need that in Canada? I mean, it's such a huge land. The majority of Canada is not habitable, right? We know that. And also we know that suburban sprawl is something that's not financially feasible. So although there's still going to be we're going to continue to have new construction, it's not going to be the same way that it used to be, where you can actually just basically manufacture a bunch of 2,000, 3,000 square foot homes across, suburban landscape, and people are going to be able to afford it. So, there's going to be some of that, but there's also going to be creative housing solutions within the existing urban boundaries that people are going to become accustomed to, especially a lot of the immigrants. They're coming from places where they're used to having multi-generations in one structure, or they're used to living in, 600 square feet, that they'd be totally fine with that, right? So I think that's
almost like a generational thing. I think you're bang on, because I feel like the millennials are the first generation that kind of got slapped around and said, hey, this thing that you were told or you expected, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And maybe the next generation after them, same thing. So everyone who's in university right now and those ones kind of graduating through, I think they already have different expectations where they're walking into adulthood not expecting already to be able to get their own single family home. So you got to think that the next generation, the ones who are maybe, just being born right now or 5 and under, whatever the years line up to for that next generation, they're going to have the expectations that you just outlined. Like, oh, it's totally normal to have a smaller space. rightly or it might look wrong to someone like me and my generation, but to them, that's what the expectations are. And that is the norm, and it's culturally accepted, and it is what it is. We're just in this transition period. And it's funny because somehow that sometimes I can see that it would upset me because I'm like, holy shit, this shouldn't be this way. But sometimes these cities just operate like this. Daniel Foch brought up a really good thing when he was on the podcast here. And he said, hey, Switzerland's a country that a lot of people would typically think is a success story and a lot of people would like to live. And half the people in that country rent. And I never really thought about it before. And it's just culturally accepted in there to rent. A couple other people have brought up that point. So I just feel like as long as my money is not being debased, then I'm willing to entertain conversations of how a city should be structured and how we should live and the size. I just hate if we're associating the inability of a younger generation to buy a property because of debasement of currency. That's where I lose my shit. That's where I'm like against everything. But if we can have a currency or a money like a Bitcoin that doesn't get debased, and we also have to have like more density in some cities to make them livable, I could accept that. I think where I was against it before, if I reflect on myself, was that I was associating smaller living spaces purely with the debasement of the currency, and it's basically a scam and that people can't save up, and that's why they can't buy these places. But there could be an argument for just the absolute need of growing populations having smaller spaces to live, I guess.
Yeah, like if you had a situation where it wasn't because of, the debasement that we talked about, right? Like, that rabbit hole that we dive deep into, but it's because people want to live in the environments where, yes, it's smaller, but they have access to the daily living that they want to, and they're okay with living in a smaller space, right? So you earlier you talked about how when you're in Europe, you're in Spain, or when you're in Croatia, you can just go downstairs and you have access to a market. It's
awesome, yeah.
Right, like it's
there's a fish market, there's a fruit market.
Yeah, or you'll bump into someone that I love it.
I love it. Yeah,
you're gonna bump into someone on the QEW and
no, yeah. So Upper Middle Road on Trafalgar.
Yeah. So. Like when I go to Asia, we'll stay in in a hotel, or we'll stay in Airbnb where we'll go downstairs. There's a restaurant, there's a supermarket, there's even like public services. And if I want to go across town, I'll hop in the subway. So it never even occurs to me that I'm going to rent a vehicle. But if I'm traveling within Canada or US, it's like I got to go after an airport. I got to go straight to the budget, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are. Like, and also here we've been, because of the lack of housing, housing's been financialized, right? Whereas when you have markets where, houses don't go up, 10% a year over year, it just becomes a commodity. It becomes what it's supposed to do, which is basically a roof over your head, right? So, I spent a lot of time in Japan as well. And there, the real estate market goes nowhere. Even though interest rates have been zero for 30 years, it's because their zoning is federal, like their house, their zoning is federally zoned. So they don't have municipal zoning. So it's basically the federal government that says that, like, where things get built. And you can basically, if you have a small plot of land, you can go and you can build housing. So for them, it's really, housing is just a commodity. It's just a roof over your head. And you could argue that, hey, why would, the real estate market there is messed up. There's no appreciation. But you can also make the argument, well, maybe you shouldn't be investing in real estate there. Maybe it should be just a house there, right? And so I see that, with some of these new changes and new policy, ultimately it's going to come to the point where if enough people get involved and do it, housing is going to be what it's supposed to be, which is a commodity, and it's not necessarily going to go up 10% a year over year.
Which I think that's fine. Thing. Yeah.
That's a good thing. Like people can afford a place to live, right?
Yes.
Now again, most people aren't going to be able to own a whole house, right? But if they have.
But if we had that world and we had a money that went up in value over time, I'm all for it, because if somebody works hard and saves, they'll still be able to buy whatever house they want.
Yep.
But right now, we're unfortunately in a world where we have this pressure on housing because of population growth and not enough housing. And we have a debasement of currency that doesn't allow people to save properly. So everybody's turning into a speculative investor. And it's just a shit show.
Yep.
So I actually don't mind a world that you're describing where housing becomes a commodity. We need to fix the money for that to work. And the sooner we fix the money, who am I kidding? I don't know. I'm just thinking, but at least there's an opportunity. And I know We don't have to dive deep into this angle, but I'm just curious, what caught your attention on Bitcoin? Because you're aware of it. What just caught your attention on it? Was just because it's a form of money?
Or we're going down that rabbit hole?
No, I'm just curious, like what caught your attention on it? Because was it because you understood gold? And then you're like, oh, there's some properties and characteristics of this that are kind of similar to gold.
I look at Bitcoin the same way I looked at gold, in that it had all the attributes of a sound money. And just like you, I believe that for us, all the problems that we have right now, I think it really comes down to the foundation. And the analogy that I like to give people, because I'm in housing and construction, I would say that if, let's say you're in a house and the door is kind of wonky and it's crooked, you can argue all day long that is it the window installer or the door installer, or is it the framer or the trim guy? But if the foundation is off, it doesn't matter what you do on the the main of the house, right?
You're screwed.
So I see all the problems that we have right now with our housing crisis. Everyone's pointing fingers. Oh, it's the investors. It's because they're investing and they're causing all the prices to go up. Oh, it's these people that like these socialists or these capitalists and all that. And I think it really comes down to it all comes down to the foundation of the economy, and that's where I see a Bitcoin or some other sound money as something that potentially in the long term that can fix these problems. And you're right. Like if we can kind of fix the foundation, and over time people can decide, hey, I want to save money, or I don't want to save money. I want to spend my money on Frappuccinos every day. And I'm going to be okay renting.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Let it be.
That's fine.
Yes.
But if I want to save money and I can afford to buy the single family home and I don't have any neighbors around me, but if you can afford to do that, that's great. I don't want to dictate and say to everyone that you must have a house that is, can't be a single family home. If it's your property and you want a single family home, who's to say that you can't have that, right? The problem is we have the other thing where people have single family homes and they're telling other people that you can't build multi-units. That's kind of the NIMBY thing, right? But on the extreme side is, because I go to these urban planning conferences and things like that, right? They're saying, not only are they saying no single family zoning, they don't even want people to build single family homes. And I'm also against that.
Yeah.
So I'm against both extremes. I'm saying if it's your piece of land, do whatever you want with it, right?
So you believe in property rights, basically.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. This is my property. Let me do with it as I please. Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned Malaysia and Japan. What are some other things you notice? Because the housing one's really powerful. When you think of housing, and you mentioned there, it's kind of just more like a commodity as it should be here. What about things like, are you noticing any differences over there compared to here with education or healthcare that come to mind? Like when you travel to Malaysia or you travel to Japan, what else are you seeing that's rather interesting that you like or don't like?
They both have, let's talk about, you want to talk about healthcare?
Sure.
Okay. So they both have public and private healthcare.
Huh.
So,
okay. I didn't even know that about both of them.
Yeah.
So there's a public, if I need healthcare, I can find it.
Yeah.
But you can pay for more expedient service if you want it.
Yeah. So here in Canada, we have, there's a couple of companies. I think one is the Cleveland Clinic, and then there was the other one. Medcan, where I guess you can sort of pay to...
You can. I think they just do... I went to Medcan like 10 years ago, and I think it was just like for a general checkup.
Yeah.
And they would do everything. They did, I think they did VO2 max testing on me. They check your blood, your eyes, your hearing, the whole bit. But then if you needed anything beyond that, they would refer you back into the, I was going to say OHIP, but like the Canadian healthcare system. So they would do a little bit. You could pay for a little bit of like a private service. Yeah.
So in Japan and in Malaysia, there's basically private healthcare where you can get a lot of the stuff that you explained. You can get a lot of the tests. You can get a lot of blood work done. You can get ultrasounds. You can get health things like VO2 max that aren't necessarily going to be available on the public side here. And you can get all that stuff done in like one day at a fraction of the cost compared to, say, a company in the U.S. And obviously in Japan, there's going to be, the doctors that are well trained that's going to kind of run that for you and run all those tests for you, and you're able to get that done at a pretty good cost. I haven't done it, but my wife, being she's from Japan, but she doesn't get the public healthcare because she's
yeah,
a resident here now.
But she can pay for it.
Yeah, she can pay for it. It's relatively inexpensive. I'm going to go to Malaysia and I'm going to do, the tests like for my age to,
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah, and it's like $400.
I love that shit.
$400,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a day, and it's they're gonna. They're going to treat you well, and they're going to...
Yeah, you're going to the you're going to the Mr. Lube for the human body.
Mr. Lube, okay, yeah.
Remember when you go to Mr. Lube and you get that car? I don't know if you ever did, but when I had my first car,
I went to Jiffy Lube.
And you get that printout of all the different fluids in your car and everything. Why don't we get that when we go to the doctor? Like, we don't even get the basic printout of like, hey, here's your thyroid, here's your blood work, here's all these different markers. Yeah. We don't even get that. And anytime I have asked for that from a Canadian doctor, I get like this. It looks like a dot matrix printer, even though it's the year 2023, of just some gray text on some stuff that I'm like, I can't even read what this says. It's just a total disaster. How the heck can our healthcare be so far behind? This is ludicrous. Nick and I were going to a meeting in the US, and I think it was Wellness FX. And you could go to this portal, and even as a Canadian, you could sign up for blood work analysis, and they would just print you a requisition. And I think we're driving to Ohio, but we stopped in Pennsylvania, and we had our blood taken. And by the time we came home, we logged into this portal, and all our blood work markers were up there beautifully with different explanations next to each marker. I'm like, I think it cost us like $99.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's definitely
you not heard of it?
The Jiffy Lube of...
It was great. I felt like a Jiffy Lube. I'm like, I walked into this random, and they just send you to like any one of these blood clinics all scattered through the US that you want to go to, and you would just walk in with this requisition. We should do it again, actually. We did it a couple times. And by the time we got home, we got this awesome website. I don't know why we haven't not continued doing that. But I just feel like we're so far behind here. Having said that, I do think Life Labs here and the other one, the competitor to Life Labs, who I always forget, I think they have some portals now. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, they're pretty good. Like,
somebody was showing me one, so I think there are some stuff.
Online. Yeah,
so maybe we're finally getting there. I just feel like we're so far behind in this country. Like, what the hell is going on? And I also feel with all our immigration, we must have so many amazing doctors that are not allowed to practice here. Yeah. They're probably perfectly well trained. Mm-hmm. Like, there must be just some little AI type quiz we can give them to give them a thumbs up and say, hey, better than some of the doctors that I've been exposed to.
Or just AI.
Maybe just AI. Holy shit. We were talking about that a little bit with AI, and have you seen that AI? Which one is it? Is it Google's one that was just coming online or something? I think it was, and it's basically a video, and the AI is looking through the camera, and you're drawing a picture, and it will then talk to you about what you're drawing. So as you draw a duck, it won't, at first it'll just say, oh, you're drawing some like curvy lines. But as you start to form the lines together to begin to look like a duck, the AI will say, oh, you're drawing a duck. And then if you draw it in blue, it'll say, well, it's a blue duck. Have you seen that demo yet?
I haven't.
No. Okay. So this got me thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, with physiotherapy. Like, I've had shoulder issues. I've had Achilles issues and stuff with physiotherapy. If you have an issue and you can go in front of a camera and just move your shoulder. Like, for the longest time, I kind of tweaked my rotator cuff and I couldn't raise my shoulder above my arm. And there's a pretty standard set of exercises that you do over the few months to kind of heal that rotator cuff movement. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, wow, with AI, can I just start like a Zoom pretty soon and just show the lack of range of motion that I have? And the AI through Zoom will just tell me, oh, you have this rotator cuff issue, do these exercises and come back every day and show me your range of motion, and I'll keep tweaking the protocol to fix it. And I was like, this doesn't feel like that far away.
Yeah. Like, you know how when you go physio and they'll press something and they're like, does it hurt this way? Does it hurt? Like, they'll probably tell you, okay, can you press this?
Yeah.
And they're like, does it hurt?
Rate it from 1 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're almost there. And then if I could put the blood work, if I could just go to any clinic like a Life Labs here and throw in some blood work, how close are we to AI just being able to spit back and say, hey, Andy, seen you've been eating some sugar there for a few months, man. You got to start cutting this out. But I mean, we must be getting pretty close. And then I guess it just comes down to which AI do you trust? Like, do you want the Google AI to do that? Or is it an AI that, like, some doctor that is some influencer that you actually trust comes out with his or her version of an AI that you're like, I will accept that AI's interpretation? Like, I wonder if we're walking into a world where it's not just a general AI, it's all these little AIs all over the place, and some are tweaked for different specialties that you trust and you go to them. And it just feel like we're so close to this. Anyway, you got to see this Google demo. Like, it's kind of freaky when you see that happening.
I'll check it out. Every time I see something new in AI, I get freaked out. And Think about like when it's
good. I think some good. Yeah, I know. I think some good. There was an AI that said that they wanted to be paid, or it was capable. They had a Bitcoin wallet, and for their services, you could pay them in Bitcoin, and that froze me for a sec because I thought, holy shit. Now we have an AI that if it's good at something and it gets paid in Bitcoin, it starts accumulating capital. It can then go rent an apartment, buy an apartment building with that capital, and then people can rent those apartments. And now we are in a world where your landlord is AI. Like, holy shit. And what happens? That AI never dies.
Yeah.
So does it just keep accumulating capital? Like, where does this end?
So what if that AI uses Bitcoin to buy a vehicle, and because you don't need drivers anymore, it self-drives, and you just pay that AI the Bitcoin, and then over time, like it just keeps accumulating sats, and like I don't know.
And then if there's like, who owns that AI? And if the AI never dies, how much capital does this AI accumulate over time? Like, I don't get it. You know, in South Korea, there is a company already for years now with an artificial intelligence algorithm, has a full seat on the board of this company and makes investment decisions. Did you know that?
I did.
Like, one seat on the board is officially the opinion of this AI. Yeah, I should dig it up again. It's a South Korean company.
Oh, Google.
This was like years ago. So where the heck are we headed? Especially, if you're telling me you can go to Malaysia and get something for like a lot cheaper, I wonder if we're just like 12 months away from even that model being blown up, where it's like, well, you don't even have to go to, Malaysia. Screw it. It's right here.
Yeah.
Go give your blood down, at the clinic, upload it into this website. The AI is going to tell you what you need to eat and what vitamins you need to take and how screwed up you are. Game over. Fuck. Well, where are we headed? Yeah, this is a little messed up, especially if it starts accumulating capital, man. It's like, where's because I just don't understand when a corporation, I guess corporations have capital and last for generations. You could look at Coca-Cola or Kellogg's or whatever, but now you have these new entities. It's a little fucking freaky, man. I don't understand how this works. I just, I guess there's a lot of positive that comes from it too. But you're right. If the AI has a fleet of cars, what happens if it starts ramming those cars into each other, Andy? Have you seen that Netflix show? Sorry, now Andy's looking at me. For anyone listening, Andy's looking at me like, Tom, what rabbit hole are you going down here? But
no, I like to see the whole thought process just evolve as you're speaking.
Well, it's just wild because I guess really you could have a kid whose best friend is going to become AI, because I could see in the future, like we all have had kids where a TV show has become their best friend. Like, all kids will play a TV show, when they were younger, and that TV show like basically raises them over time because they watch so many episodes of just some random cartoon or whatever it is. And then they graduate from that into Roblox or Minecraft. So what happens if these kids go into Minecraft and there's literally some AI in this Minecraft where they get to be a friend, and the Minecraft AI can jump out of Minecraft and have the same personality and knowledge of that person, but now in the next iteration of the game when they're playing a more advanced game on PS5, and it's this person that kind of grows up with them, and this AI becomes their friend for years. And does that AI then get enough knowledge where it can be also their doctor when they're older? Like, are we entering a world where AI is going to be like this weird friend you have for your lifetime?
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up.
There's this phrase in Japan called hikikomori. It's like mostly men that don't go out of their house. And
the AI is their friend?
So basically I think I watched a video where there's these guys that actually, have this AI girlfriend, and they actually even, I think there's something where they even marry their AI girlfriend.
This is today?
Yeah. You can kind of search it up on YouTube. So it seems like there's a demand for that kind of stuff.
And if that's the case, then
there's going to be a certain segment of the population that's just, yes, sure. Why not? Yeah. If I can marry a human, why can't I marry a robot?
Yeah. Doesn't give me crap. Says everything makes me happy.
You sold me on that. No.
No, but like you could see that shit. Oh God. And to me, it's like then the AIs really become the center of some economic activity. It's like you enter the matrix slowly over time because the humans just become plugged into this greater intelligence where the humans aren't the intelligence anymore and the AI is the intelligence and the AI has the capital. Fuck. Like, I don't understand how we don't get into that world. Like, it just feels almost inevitable. And I know there's a lot of good. Like, if we can get access to everybody to get access to a doctor to analyze their blood work and do it on the cheap, I'm all for that. And it seems like with technology, to Jeff Booth's point, that's coming. We're all going to be able to get advanced diagnosis from the most specialist type, medical person via AI at our laptops in an instant's notice. And that's got to be coming. Like, that must be coming very soon. Someone's likely working on that today. Let's face it. So that part's great. It's just this evolution of AI that becomes people's friends and then starts accumulating capital. I don't know. I just can't. I know I'm down a weird rabbit hole. I've taken this podcast down a weird rabbit hole, Andy. But it just it's kind of fascinating.
It seems like the trend. I mean, that's the trend. The part that I have difficulty reconciling is how does that relate to private property? If Bitcoin is the ultimate private property because you own your private keys and nobody can take them from you, right? Not even AI. Like, if you had whatever, a 12 seed or 24 seed, there's nothing that can actually take that away. So if AI actually wanted that capital and they don't have it, do they have, and if that is the ultimate private property, do they have full control? So I don't know how to reconcile that, right?
Because if they earn some Bitcoin from me, because they've given me some service, I will give them some Bitcoin in exchange for the value they've offered me, just like a free market would.
But you would want it. You would have to want it first. If you don't want it, because you don't need it. Because of as Jeff Booth says, everything falls to the marginal cost of production. So if you don't need that AI because there's another AI that could be cheaper or better.
Got it. Good point. Right?
So you're not going to want to give up your private property for that thing.
I have the ultimate private property, which in this example would be Bitcoin, and I don't need to give it up in exchange for something because the price or the cost of getting what I need is going to drop to such a low amount that I can maintain the majority of my private property, my value, my purchasing power. But over time, I would think that it doesn't matter, even small increments. Some of these AIs are going to get some capital. But I see your point. It's a good point. Yeah, that it'll just get so inexpensive. So then can we make medical care so inexpensive that it's almost just free?
I think that's the trend. I think ultimately if medical care comes down to, let's say, information and I guess there's going to be physical resources that you need as well, right? But those marginal costs are going to come down as well. That it's just going to keep coming lower and lower, as with every valuable thing for most people. Like, we talk a lot about housing, right? So if robotics can build more housing and do more, whatever, repair existing homes and provide more housing, ultimately the costs are going to come down.
So the costs come down. You're right, because I agree with you. Absolutely. The costs come down, but our current financial system still needs the GDP to go up to pay for all the old debt that's in the system. So we're really at a crossroads of two worlds. Yep. One world, debt-ridden, has to be more debt for it to survive without collapse. New world, costs go down, everything falls to the marginal cost of production, which is basically, with technology, zero. Kind of quote Jeff Booth, summarize some of his thoughts. So we're at this weird crossroads where one financial world is in the process of gonna just collapsing, slow death. So maybe that one world just slowly dies and another world is emerging. That's why I think we are at a nice crossroads, just to kind of bring it home to what you're doing in real estate. I do feel the combination of real estate, and if somebody is open-minded enough to think about some stuff, Bitcoin, it does put you in kind of the driver's seat of both worlds, because real estate, I've always thought, allows me to play as a central banker, even though I'm not one. It's the only way an average Canadian can create new money. You sign a mortgage, you created the money, you refinance the property, you create new money. It's the only way Canadians can really do that. And real estate allows you to do that. So it kind of allows you to maximize the benefits, if you want to call them that, of an old world. And Bitcoin allows you to measure the productivity gains in the new world, because in relation to the quote unquote fiat price of your Bitcoin, everything's going to fall in price. So it's that to me, and that's why I think I get excited about that combo. Like a real estate combo with some Bitcoin in your life, to me, feels like the magical combo. It feels like the right way to live life on your terms over the next few years. And you can ratio that to your liking. You can do 1% Bitcoin, 99% real estate, or, have whatever your diversified portfolio would be, or you can go much higher into Bitcoin if you have more conviction and have much less in the old world. But it does feel like a nice ability to kind of play with those two things. Anyway, Andy, so we kind of went all, we started with garage conversions, ADUs, and we ended off with AI and the marginal cost of production.
We went into this and saying, let's not have an agenda, because every time I come here, we talk. I think it's a little bit of a snooze fest because I keep talking about how
it's not.
Second suite.
The stuff.
But today, I think this is
this stuff. It's never. And just so you know, for me, it's never a snooze fest because it's a snooze fest for you because you're maybe so used to talking about.
No, I can talk about that all day.
Yeah, that stuff is kind of the world. And listen, look at the impact that you're having on investors' lives. If you can introduce on a garage conversion, let's say you're getting $1,500 to $2,000 or $2,200 on a new garage conversion ADU. Look what that can do to somebody's family. You have one property that maybe with higher interest rates is negative cash flow. You bring one of these things into the fold on a property, you can be back to positive cash flow, maybe $1,000 a month. So what you're bringing to life here for people, I feel like is the future. Mm-hmm. Like this is it. I feel like you're in such a sweet spot and you're serving people. So Andy, it's never a snooze fest. Okay. It's never a snooze fest. In fact, you got to come back. I was just talking to you about this. You got to come back more often and give us updates about what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Where can people find you? What your YouTube? You do a great job. Anyone listening, if you want to see some conversions in process, are you doing any videos with the garage conversions or no?
We did, yeah.
You have?
Yeah. So we've done probably 2 or 3 garage conversions.
Okay, so where can people find your content? Where's the best
on YouTube, the best is probably YouTube Suite. Just Google or YouTube Suite Editions, or the website to get a hold of us.
And what's the website?
SUITE. Editions.com.
And then on Instagram?
I think it's sweet_editions.
I like how nobody knows their Instagram handle. Sweet_editions on Instagram. Yeah. And then anywhere else that people can find you?
I would say we're probably most active on right now on YouTube and Instagram, on Facebook.
And what's 2024 going to bring for Andy Tran? Anything you want to talk about yet or not yet?
Yeah, sure. So we're continuing with the projects with our clients, with design permit work. We're going to pivot a little bit and provide more education and training for people. So one of the big initiatives for 2024 is we're going to be partnering with a bunch of professionals. So people who are in this space, whether it's other designers and architects, whether it's contractors, realtors, lenders, everybody who wants to take advantage of not just the real estate prices, the trends in that direction, but also the policy changes, and all of the local changes we're seeing with the densification. I think that for the average, let's say for the average realtor to compete with all the other realtors is a little bit challenging. Obviously, you guys have a niche with investors, and it's worked great. But if there's any professionals out there that want to find a niche, I think this densification space is actually a really good niche.
Agreed.
I think whether you're a homeowner or investor, if they can say, hey, I want to work with a realtor that understands this stuff, I think you're going to be a little bit more at a competitive advantage.
You're elevating the conversation for sure.
Yeah, so we're looking to partner with those people, and I think that if anybody's interested, reach out to us. And I would say the first thing is we want them to be educated, so we do have those programs available. We have obviously a lot of free material. Even if somebody didn't take any of our educational material, but just went through all of our YouTube videos, we feel that
your YouTube videos are top.
Yeah, we feel like they would get even that they would get an advantage.
And you send out an email with links to your YouTube videos fairly regularly.
Yeah, I try to do it weekly.
Okay, so you get on that list by going to sweeteditions.com. Is there an option to put in your email address?
Yeah, just go subscribe, and then you can put in your email address. You'll get a bunch of guides that basically discusses everything that we talked about today with garden suites and second suites and all that stuff. You'll get my weekly spam, and,
cool.
And then from there you can kind of decide if you want to dig deeper into the rabbit hole.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy Tran. Appreciate this, man. Really appreciate you coming by. Thank you for supporting us the way you have. Thank you. You've taught a class here, I don't know for how many years, and the knowledge that you're sharing back and the feedback that we get on that class from Rockstar Inner Circle members. Thank you for what you do there.
Really, just I love doing that. It's great.
Yeah, feel blessed to cross paths, man. Thanks you. Thanks you. I can't even speak. Thank you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Terms show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.